So welcome back to our Series 5 on playing over changes. Now we've had G minor, going to C minor, and back to G minor. So we've looked at the idea of changing scales as we're going along, which we covered in the last segment. So the next question is, well, what happens after that? Now, we have an interesting change here. This crops up in a few different songs, and I'm sure you'll be able to think of a few different examples. As I said earlier on, chord sequences are sort of universal, if you will. But at the same time, each of us have different artists or recordings that we would think, oh, that makes me think of that. So, for example, let's take two examples. Say I do this. Okay. Now, most people will think of Carlos Santana as soon as you play that. Some people will think of Carole King. Okay. Some people think of George Harrison, My Sweet Lord. Okay, so how you frame all of these is really up to is really affected by your own personal musical experiences. However, the important thing, putting all that to one side, what are we left with? Well, we're left with the harmonies. So we need to be comfortable with playing over changes, and that's really the purpose of this. So having had a whole G minor riff, and then our C minor back to G minor, the next thing that happens, we've got an E flat, and then a D, back to G minor. Okay, now if you haven't seen the previous series on playing changes, it's very important that you go back and have a look. But what we're going to look at here is say to ourselves, well, okay, well, what could we do to play over this particular change and try and articulate it? We could just be bashing away on G minor pentatonic, and in some situations that's fine, but it's interesting to see how much more colour you can get by thinking about chord changes. Now, we've confined pretty much all of this particular series to playing around this area, and obviously you can investigate this in other areas on the neck, and it's actually very important that I don't overstate what you can do in the other areas, because it's very important you discover stuff for yourself, so you develop your own individual style and you don't want to become a clone, as it were. As somebody once said to me, it's better to be a perfect version of yourself than a really bad impression of somebody else. So we've got E flat going to D, and as ever, geography plays a big part in this stuff. So I'm going to say to myself, well, okay, where can I play E flat that's very close to my G minor? Okay, now I'm sure most of you will be familiar with E and A shaped bar chords, or I should certainly hope so, without sounding like I'm nagging too much. But of course, we've also got a C shaped bar chord, and that's the one which is sitting right next to the G minor. Okay, so today's video is about linking we're going to put our scales to one side because we don't want to overcomplicate things. All we want to think about here is how do we get from G minor pentatonic to E flat. So here's a couple of little examples. Here's another one. so all of those phrases I've gone straight to the root note of the E flat chord there because it's the most obvious way of articulating the change. But it's also possible to use notes which are common to both chords. You get the idea. There's another example. Okay, so that's about it for today. The next segment we'll be looking at what to do about getting to our next chord in the sequence. As ever, we want to take it in nice, easy steps. G minor to E flat first of all. Let's get that sorted first, then we move on. Okay. If you could press the subscribe button, that would be very nice. Thank you very much, and bye for now.